Hi, I'm Phil Anderson and welcome to my channel. I've been a property investor now for over 30 years and I've watched investors continue to make the same common investment mistakes. There's so many dirty tricks in the real estate industry and it's all caught up in a whole heap of sales hype. I want to cut through that sales hype and help investors avoid the common mistakes. I hope you enjoy the following content, but please remember to like and subscribe.
G'day listeners and viewers across the country and welcome to another episode of Street Smart Property Investing, where as always I'm joined by a couple of my favourite industry experts, Mr. Gordon Ruddy and Mr. Trent Durrington, and I'll cross over to these gentlemen in just a second and we'll talk a little bit about a hot topic at the moment, which is the risks around small developments. Now, as always, we're going to have a look behind the headlines. We're going to get behind the sales hype and see what's going on the ground in the real estate market. We're going to cross over to one of the busiest regional locations in the country. In fact, I think it may be the busiest, or within 3 kilometres of what is technically the biggest selling market in regional Australia in all of 2021. So we're going to cross over and have a talk to Mr. Matt Conduit in Broadbeach in just a moment. Gentlemen, let's get back to the key topic for today. Now, Trent, you are highly skilled in the area of small developments, of identifying key locations and identifying what projects will work, sets of townhouses, villas, house and land packages, assessing projects and as an acquisitions screening, consulting business for some of the biggest builders in Australia and down to the private investor. You've got a wealth of experience. Now, I know you talk about 3 key things when it comes to small development. You bring it all back to the numbers, I know, but you talk about time that's going to take. You talk about the cost that's going to, be incurred to bring the project to fruition, but also how they're going to fund those projects. What advice would you have for the mum and dad investor at home that's thinking about taking on their first small development?
You better make sure they've got a lot of time, because it is a full-time job. With the experience, with the amount of sites that you look at, you may shortlist 20% of those sites. Then 10% of the sites you may look to try and get under contract under a DD period, due diligence period, which is tough in itself in depending on certain vendors, in their expectations of the length of what a sale will take on a development site. Then you've got to spend money with consultants, firm up your pricing with engineers, planners, build price, and then at that point you can make the correct assumptions that it's going to be a profitable site. So that process in itself is 3 months. And it's a full-time job.
I think this is one of the first things. I think a lot of investors that step in, they think that there's going to be this, buy a project, have a bit of fun doing it and turn it over in about 12 months' time. But you think that timeline is more like 2 years or something like that?
Oh, 2 years minimum.
Yeah, turnkey from start to finish.
From start to finish turnkey from start to look at a project to potentially having a unit, a townhouse or a block of land that you can sell is minimum 2 years. You roughly 12 months to get an approval. Then if you're looking at 12 months constructions, if you've got any sort of hold-ups with council and getting titles, and then you get it to the market and hopefully make a sale, it's 2 years minimum. It doesn't matter how big a scale or small the project is. So that's time. The experience and the cross-checking consultants, planners, what's their advice, potential engineers, the issues you can have with Energex, with NBN, Telstra. The list goes on.
Goes on and on.
Yeah,
now, what, mate, look, I guess, you've seen and you've been involved in literally hundreds of these, site appraisals and managed, kind of construction periods and projects and dealt with councils, and you've seen it all. You've seen the twists and turns. And one of the things that becomes pretty obvious is that most of the majors will have, they'll all have a team that are pretty much doing this, sort of screening the best sites consistently and land banking. But even those, I guess, medium scale builders that have got a good little model, in their local area, they're doing it all the time. They're land banking all the time.
Yeah, those guys that are on the ground. If we talk about the small developer, that's how he makes his bread and butter. He's typically a guy that's very hands-on on the tools even. Could be a small builder developer. He'll only sort of deal in his own market as well. He's got a very good feel of pricing, where the market's been, where it is now, where he predicts it's going to be. He's got all the same consultants, normally got all the same trades. So he can run his ship pretty tight.
Yeah.
And he's got a very good feel of his costs. So for that guy, it's good. Can be a good business.
That is his business.
That
right?
is his
and
business.
we spoke about this topic obviously before we came in today, and we thought of specific builders and gentlemen that have got 20, 30 years of building experience in a particular postcode. They're typically builders or brickies or whatever they may be, but they've eventually become the building company that are seizing these little sites, and then got a nice little model where they give themselves a job through the process, and they're able to control some of the the income earning through the construction phase, not just the profits on the development. But the realisation that we had was even beyond the scope of the big players, the guys that you would consult to that are doing hundreds of builds per year and so forth, and you've had a lot of experience with them over the years. These small to medium size, small scale developers in each of our postcodes, they are typically beyond the scope of the big guys grabbing the obvious stuff, the bigger chunks of dirt and so forth. These guys are picking the eyes out of the best development sites before most of the less experienced developers even, sort of start looking for land. They're usually soaked up by these guys. They've grabbed the best of the development sites, the stuff that's got the easiest, I guess, development potential.
Yeah, well, typically they're buying a lot of stuff that never hits the market too. Those medium-sized sort of companies have an acquisitions department, and it can be as raw as door knocking on certain sites. They typically get called by agents first, where an agent may have a vendor that's potentially, made an inquiry about potentially selling a development site. Those sites don't hit the market, so they get that opportunity first to either pursue it or knock it on the head.
Sure. And I guess the reason why we felt it was really necessary to talk about this topic today is because of the conversations we're each having, over recent weeks. There's so much confidence in the market. It's so hard to get stock. It's so hard to, find either a property or a block of land. So there's this layer, I think, and a feeling that we may see some people are in pretty good positions that have the financial capacity to be able to buy a small development site and want to potentially, try their hand at small developments. We're watching these people walk head on into what we see as being major headaches with regards to buying projects that we know through experience they're not easy sites to develop. Many of the good sites are all gone, and as the market moves, of course, the guys that have the ability have dug even deeper into the financial resources behind them to hold even more sites. So the ones that do present on the market typically are the, unfortunately, the crappy end of the stick. They're just the best sites have been taken already. Big concerns.
Yeah, no, that's right. Again, there is a market for there, but my advice is it's a full-time job. So if you are going to invest in that as a development, you may see those big development or think there's big development profits. It's not always the case. Lots of risk. It's those things you've mentioned there, Phil. It's the time and the ability to fund them. And they all come with risk.
Mate, I know you and I look at stuff and we are very interested in land developing, and we, it's a passion we both share. But in every project, I think people underestimate how much money can be spent on the due diligence process, and quite often the project doesn't go ahead. And you've kind of got to be prepared as a if you're going to step across that line, which I'd be very cautious of. I know I've done it myself personally, only to realise I'm not a developer. I'm not I did commercial projects and small developments and so forth. I went, oh gosh, I can burn a lot of cash doing this, right? But obviously having, relationships with gentlemen like yourself, I can now consider land developing and so forth because of your knowledge. But I see how many tens of thousands are spent on due diligence, and you've still got to be comfortable once you've spent it, walking away if the numbers don't work perfectly, because it's just such a slippery slope.
That's right, yeah. So apart from the money that, the first off is coming to try and negotiate the contract for you to have the time and the ability to do the correct due diligence on that site. So that's one thing. That's a mindset thing with the seller and an agent that's willing to work through that. And then secondly, spending some money to firm up that pricing, because once you're into the site, your numbers are pretty tight. You want to make your margins. So you need to be sure that the engineering, whatever those things might be, what sewer you're going to link into, yada yada, it's going to be heaps of stuff. I mean, it's there's a lot of tangibles that you've got to firm up the pricing. So by the time and your pricing, obviously, depending on the type of product, there's always construction involved, whether it's raw land or whether it's a townhouse. You've got to firm up that pricing. So,
mate, talking about townhouses, I just, my memory goes straight, or my thought goes straight to a gentleman that I asked you to help out with not too long back. A friend of mine who bought a townhouse site down in Victoria, did a bit of due diligence, spent a bit of money, bought a site, and still got into trouble because he ended a contract with a builder to do this construction, to do the development, to build the project. He was a busy gentleman, a professional gentleman, and it still spiralled out of control through variations on contracts and moving targets and so forth, because that is the scope of what you're entering into. It's a very different animal to a house and land package where we can control those prices.
Yeah, well, pricing on a site, that particular site, a builder had given the gentleman a price as if the builder could come in and just build on this raw bit of land, a construction price. Even that was a bit open-ended because there was interpretations between facades, level of finish. What we hadn't taken into account was trying to get services to that to the builder. The builder would wipe his hands of, you get everything to me and I'll build the house from the slab up. So he ran into you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars of variations that weren't picked up.
Yeah, by the time he was in mid-project, he realised he was in a real pickle, and it's unfortunately all too common.
And then a dispute starts between the owner and the builder, fallout. Then it's time, then it's holding costs, then it's a market changing.
Well, what can happen in 2 years, right? Yeah. You get into a project when a market's moving, potentially investor targets a market because it's a hot market, so they come in and they may be, already in the growth phase. They target it because they know it's really a hot market at that time. Maybe pay a little bit more than they would have a year or two earlier to get into that hot market. And by the time the product is ready to come back into the market as a saleable item, that market could have finished that growth phase, right?
Yeah.
So it could be on the other side.
Yeah, timing's everything, right? And timing's everything in life, but more so in the development space.
Yeah,
timing has to be perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Ruddy. Now, Gordon Ruddy is a gentleman that I love having here with us. He's one of the most... being here. Good on you. I appreciate you being here. One of the most, trusted property investment advisors in Australia. A great friend of mine for more than 30 years. But Gordy, just through the eyes of you dealing with investors, as each and every day you're helping investors buy and navigate, the Australian property market. This craving to be hands-on and do some sort of developing, does it come from what we're seeing on TV, the block and all of those sorts of layers, or where does it come from?
I really think it does, and I'm really happy we're talking about this today, because it's so important. Because people they watch the block and I watch it and I go, man, I don't want to do that. But people look at it, maybe they thrive on the drama of it, but I go, man, There's no prizes for making a bedroom look good. If you're behind budget, no one's going to come up and say, hey, mate, that looks good. I'm going to give you some money towards your project. It doesn't happen in real life. You know, you run out of money, you run out of money. And that can so easily happen. It's not a fairy tale. It's not get together with your loved one and go, you know, we'll walk hand in hand into this morning and we'll spend a day stripping the wall of paint. To me, that's not romantic.
I've seen so many people that have thought their whole, you know, buy and renovate's going to be such a fun experience, and you know, all too often
a few relationships break down because of it. Eh?
Well, you put you know, the pressures of those sorts of environments together with often the pressures of money and issues that continue to spiral. It's dangerous.
You mentioned things like the block, and you see the pressure that builds there between couples, and they've got all sorts of support around them. You go into this on your own, you're on your own. Unless you've got, you know, a really rich uncle that's going to come in and go, I'll bail you out. This, you know.
Just on that, if we're talking, you know, the buy and renovate and sell, there is a market for that, and you'll see couples doing it, but they are doing it full time.
They're doing it.
And got some real skills. You know, maybe the wife is an interior decorator and the husband has a trade of some sort. They've got some sort of general knowledge, and you can see how for some people it is something that they think is fun, and they have enough knowledge to make it work.
It'll work for the right people. There's lots of things you can do in life that work for the right people. But if you want to invest in property, and what you want to do is invest in property, you don't want another job for yourself, then renovating is not the way to go.
No.
You know, so the property should just be a vehicle for you to gain wealth. It's not, you just do not want another job.
It's an important thing to point out, you know, because, you know, what we're very interested in, and I've even described myself over the years as being a very lazy investor. Now, that doesn't mean I've made plenty of mistakes over that course of time. You know, I've tried my hand at doing developing and renovating and a whole range of stuff. I've got commercial property and holiday let property and all these different facets to my portfolio. But I've just worked out that the small sweet fruit, that, you know, that buy, you know, good quality, affordable family home in a market that's at a healthy stage of its cycle, and just leave it alone. Try to do nothing. Try to buy it so it's turnkeyed from day one. It's, you know, always works out to be the best way. You know,
the best way. You know, it's, you know, Trent mentioned the numbers before, and, you know, with what we help people with, we can do that. We can go, well, we know what the numbers are. You know, we get fixed price contracts. There's no variations. What the contract says is what you pay.
Get an independent bank panel valuer to come in and do a valuation. You can't put even the pressure on yourself to think you know how much to spend on a property. We never do that to ourselves. We don't walk into a market and go, oh yeah, that property's worth $595,000, because we know a bank panel valuer could come in and say, well, we think it's only worth $565,000, you know, and that's the safer thing for us to be able to do. We've seen some investors, some people that we really care about, step in and blow, you know, I'm thinking one gentleman, it's over $500,000 he blew very quickly. People are in really good positions that can put themselves backwards.
Turns it around like that.
The thing that concerns me is the conversations I'm having at the moment, and the people that are seeking advice from me at the moment tend to be the ones that are bringing up this desire to do the small developments, tend to be in their mid to late 50s or even into their 60s. They're in good positions, but they could quite easily set themselves back years and find themselves trapped in the workforce for 5 or 10 years longer than they expected to be, just through not understanding how slippery this slope can be.
Just taking unnecessary risks. You don't need to take those risks.
Okay, guys, let's cross over and have a talk to a gentleman that is one of the busiest agents at the moment in Australia, one of the busiest postcodes in Australia at the moment, one of the top regional performers at Broadbeach on the Gold Coast. Let's cross over and have a chat to Mr. Matt Conduit. How are you, buddy?
G'day, how you going, fellas?
Mate, we're great.
Good to see you, Matty.
Good to see you.
Thanks, mate. Thanks, boys.
Mate, it's busy up there, I hear, hey? What's going on?
Yeah, mate, we have been really busy, actually. We sort of started getting really busy just before Christmas there, and mate, it's just sort of taken off in that straight after Christmas, it was just non-stop. We didn't have any breaks. We just worked all the way through all my team and all the sites, and just keep plowing the sales through. So it's been really good. We've sold out of a couple of products since we've spoken last, and we've just released 30 townhouses in Labrador, which I've just completed and sold the first stage out, and we're releasing the next stage next week. So that's also been successful in that sort of late fives mark, so at 550 to 580,000 mark. They've been selling well, which is good.
Yeah, mate. I know that, mate. I know you're very, very busy. You're, one of the most in-demand guys, and I think probably the number one office when it comes to the apartment sector, and the big developers love, obviously, your connection to a very solid database of investors in Sydney and Melbourne and so forth. You've got a big presence that way. Mate, obviously this stage in the market, it certainly, I know that you were a little concerned, is this going to keep up? Are we going to enter 2021? Is it going to be as busy as it was feeling late last year? But yes, it has. It's kicked off, and it's certainly feeling every bit as good and maybe even better than last year.
Yeah, well, I think combined with low interest rates and the whole factor of this, just so much demand from sort of our southern states to purchase here, and also diversify their investments, we can't see it slowing down for some time yet. I mean, I know everyone sort of keeps talking about the whole COVID push, but I think people's plans have just been fast forwarded to this area of southeast Queensland, and a lot of people do see this place as a place that they'd love to retire someday, and in the meantime make some extra money with an investment opportunity up this way.
Yeah, mate, I totally agree. I think that's, for me, I get a little bit confused about the whole terminology around regional, centres and so forth, because, you and your sector, it's feeling very much, it's hard to call it like a typical regional centre. You've got every facility there. It's as strong as any city region is within Australia, really. What I believe is happening, and people are, this flow that we're seeing, from all the data I'm reading, from what I'm seeing from investors' interest, etc., I think it's just getting started for you guys, man. I think you may be really surprised what the next 2 or 3 years looks like for you guys.
Yeah, well, let's hope it rolls for as long as that. It'd be absolutely brilliant. I mean, it's got all the ingredients to roll for that period of time. If you think about it, our climate's not going anywhere. Our prices are still very reasonable and represents very good value for money. And I think one of the most important factors of it, which is obviously one of the main ingredients to investing, is that consistent demand for rental property.
Absolutely.
And that's the third ingredient that really kicks this place along. I mean, it's still affordable to rent here. I mean, the average 2-bedroom apartment in Broadbeach, looking out over the ocean's about sort of $650 to $700 a week would be where that average catchment is. Our rentals start from sort of $450 a week for Central Broadbeach for a 1-bedroom apartment, and then they go up to sort of luxurious apartments while we're getting around about the $1,200 a week rent mark for something value of about $1 million at the moment. So it's still, very affordable for a lot of people, and you're capturing that lifestyle, which is fantastic. And,
if you can find a property, Matty, there's not many properties available at the moment, right? What's your vacancy rate like there, mate? What do you?
It's actually 0.6% at the moment, so it's actually under 1%. We actually, of all the whole rent roll that I have, we actually haven't got one property vacant, and we've actually start advertising a couple of weeks out before a property becomes vacant. So therefore, as soon as it is vacant, we get it bond cleaned and all the carpets cleaned and everything done properly, and then we've got the new couple or family moving into that apartment. So we actually are running it basically. There is no vacancies now, so every week of the year, our investors are receiving the income, which is fantastic, and then a lot of them are, depreciating the asset through depreciation schedules and things like that. So they're actually enabled to, saving some good tax as well. So the investments are working very well for our clients.
Yeah, mate, I know you've been one of the star performers when it comes to property management, that office. I know your background is, sales, and you're considered to be one of the strongest guys nationally, and even you've got experience internationally. I know that as well.
Well, he looks after one of my properties, so I can speak firsthand.
I know this is the thing. This is part of the introduction. Was you raved about their property management team? You've dealt with them personally over the years. Strong team. An office that could be underestimated because of the fact that it's not a massive office at the frontage of that office that you have. Although you might have a couple of locations you're working from there now in Broadbeach, but a really strong property management team.
Yeah, that's where I'm coming live from today. I've bought a specific commercial 170 square meters in Broadbeach here, and this is specifically purchased for property management. So this is where all my property managers work out of. I've got 2 different boardrooms. This is just one of them, and all the hot desks out the front, and then I've got 6 property managers here working full-time managing. And then this is also a place for people to come up and do their applications in the middle of Broadbeach too. So there's easy parking and easy access.
Very good spot there.
Which is good. But you've got to provide that sort of service if you're looking after quality assets. You know what I mean? You can't be happy with a manager that's not absolutely on the ball. And as I say, there's never a problem until there's a problem. But when there is a problem with a tenant, you want to have all the paperwork sorted and a good property manager behind the scenes, because it's not a great quality tenant is not a good situation to have. You want to have good quality people in there from the start, so you can you run your asset every 12 months nice and stress free.
I reckon there'd be a lot of people, sorry, Matty, but there are a lot of people that'd be coming up for their lease renewals and maybe not realising there's probably a bit of a rent rise, I'd imagine, on the horizon for many people too. It must be sneaking up the rents.
Yeah, it is going up. Yeah, we're putting them up to be fair, as often as we can, which is not great for the tenant, but every opportunity we have, we're putting them up, and anywhere from sort of, you can only put them up a certain amount legally as well, but they're all going up when we can push them up. But also keeping in mind, once we've had a long-term tenant in there looking after the asset for the client, we're not in a hurry to push it up too far, because we don't want to push that good quality client out of that property. So we've got a lot of tenants that have been there for 2 and 3 years in the same property, and so we keep them settled, and we keep the rent realistic, so they can afford it, and they don't move on and go anywhere else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We just had a client. We just had a client that's been paying $1,500 a year for 5 years. And she's only just given notice. So there you go, $1,500 for 5 years. She's been in that property at Cronulla Avenue here in Mermaid Waters, or Mermaid Beach. So yeah, 5 years at $1,500.
A week she's paying.
A week.
Yeah, right.
For 5 years she's been there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of rent. But yeah,
it's a lot of rent. Yeah,
a lot of rent.
A lot of rent.
What about your southern state interest as far as buyers, mate, and setting pricing? I know we talked a number of different principles around the country, and I think the market's setting the price for sales. Are you finding that as well in your market?
Yeah. We've just we have had some good price growth here in different regions on the coast, but it's the amount of buyers we've got is the difference. Do you know what I mean? Like that interest level's just sort of, probably 30% more buyers in a marketplace. And the other thing that's sort of fueling that bit of a frenzy here at the moment is there's still not a lot of stock on the market. You know what I mean? It's really an undersupply of good property to purchase, and a 30% increase of buyers puts pressure on what stock there is hitting the market, and that's why you're finding 20 and 30 groups coming in for an open home, and that's just it's sort of stressing a few buyers out as well, because good quality buyers are missing out on good stock because they're just missing out. There's multiple offers on the same property on the same day, and that's what's causing a little bit of stress within the buyers. And also tenants, we're getting a lot of tenants coming back, but they actually can't understand why they haven't been approved, because they're both working, they're good people, they've paid their rent on time. Yeah, they're good quality tenants, and and they're coming in going, well, but why wasn't I approved? I mean, some of them are even offering more than the asking price, in order to get that property. And so there's never been a better time for people to look at investing into this region. We encourage them to do so.
Right?
Yeah, it's the reality of it. We've got all the ingredients at the moment. It's a great time to be investing, that's for sure. We've got growth and we've got a very strong rental demand.
Yeah, look, I think there's a really interesting, thing about your particular part of the market there too, Matty. You've got a mixture of a lot of stuff going on. There's some premium, traditional housing, obviously, in that market. Some great, unit examples, apartment examples, and one of the things that's got my interest a little bit is a little trend towards the apartments being quite high end and really nice family home kind of developments that we're starting to see come into the market as well, or have a place in the market. There's such a diverse range of stock in a fairly small footprint there, Matt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's exactly right. A lot of the business we do is a higher end apartment style type. We've got 60 units in Kirra in council at the moment, which we'll be releasing as soon as it comes out of council. I've got 5, 1 unit per floor in Palm Beach as well. That's in council. I've already got buyers lined up to buy that as soon as it comes out of council. As I said, we've got 120 apartments currently that we're not far from releasing. That's in council as well in Surf Parade. And we've just completed, I think, just under $70 million worth of sales in a building called Marley, which is your premium residential only, over $10,000 a square metre. Average 2-bedroom is 1.2 million. And we've got 2 apartments left in that.
Mate, I've been looking through some of that stock, and we're looking at one this morning, looking at these different, there's, 1 property per floor level type residence. Mate, it's sexy stock. I think it's going to be as expensive as some people would see it as being. I think it represents really good value, mate. I think over the next few years it's going to be pretty smart. Securing some of those properties and what the market should do over the next couple of years in that premium level stock. That's, I think, a pretty, interesting little sector.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, a funny situation happened to me this morning. One of my really good friends that I was only at his birthday last weekend in Broadbeach at a restaurant, and 1,000 beers later. Well, I didn't have 1,000. I had just under 1,000 beers. He had 1,000.
Good to hear you restrain yourself.
Yeah, I just always watch how many I have. But he was on the hunt for something beautiful, off the plan, up to 3 million. And I was texting him a fair bit of information there on Thursday and Friday last week. And I said, mate, this is what's coming up, and this is what I recommend you should look at, and all the rest of it. And him and his wife went out on Saturday morning to drive past a few of the sites that I had let him know about. And would you believe that they actually saw an open home of a sub-penthouse of a building that's just been completed? I wasn't aware that they had a resale in the particular building, and they went in and spent 4.2 million on Saturday afternoon. And he just rang me like literally before this podcast and said, mate, you're going to kill me, but I apologize. I've sort of bought without you, and I've bought this particular piece of stock. And I just went, wow, that's amazing. So those people have got a beautiful main river property as well. And the thing is that they know their main river property is in high demand. They know that there's not a lot of finished stock that's good looking out over the beach that's finished. All of this other stuff's 2 years away. So they felt the pressure that they needed to make a decision pretty quickly because there's not a lot of stock around.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And that's
prime
happening,
example.
Mate. That is happening.
Really good.
It's definitely happening, mate. We're seeing it happen. I think you might be frozen there a little bit, mate. It's not often that you, he's back again. It's not often that we see you without, unable to say something, or you just freeze on the spot, mate. You just froze there for a second.
Oh, yeah, sorry, mate. I just had another call come through. I don't know how to get rid of calls so quickly. But yeah, I haven't. Still got phone calls coming through.
No, well, look, mate, we appreciate you giving us some time, mate. We know you're busy. We know that also you've got, like, obviously so many investors there in the database because of all that range of stock. You got people from, one of the most diverse databases in Australia, Melbourne investors, Sydney investors and so forth. And we just appreciate you sharing your passion for, the whole investor-approved model and trying to just protect those investors if they're looking to buy outside your area. I know they're in great hands when they're looking to buy locally, but we're trying to help them out when they're looking elsewhere as well. So we look forward, mate, to sharing more content. I know we're going to run some webinars for your database each quarter and so forth, and just, mate, but we'd love to have you on the, as a guest on the podcast whenever we can get access to you. We always enjoy getting an update from you, mate, what's going on the ground there in the heart of the Gold Coast. So thanks for giving us your time.
Yeah.
Mate.
Yeah, pleasure, guys. Thanks for all the work you're doing out there and helping investors. It's a good cause, and as I said, we've got all the ingredients at the moment to put them into some really good property here. And I'm sure you guys, with your criteria of what properties you select for your clients, are going to be great. And mate, we're always here and always happy to help. And great time in the market. So let's enjoy. And I've also got some good stock coming up too. So if you let me know if you need anything, I've got some really good stuff in council that's coming through. So there'll be heaps of good opportunities for everyone out there. And keep up the good work, guys.
Good on you, Matty. Thanks
mate.
Thanks for the update, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Cheers,
pleasure.
mate.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Always great to have a chat to Matt. He's always got plenty of energy. Full of energy, and he's a busy guy at the moment. He's obviously got heaps on.
It's a pumping market for him currently.
Yeah, absolutely. So just, obviously the core bit of content that we wanted to cover today was just to heighten, I guess, the awareness around the risks that can be attached to small developing. Of course, if you have the skills as a builder or maybe a range of, experience, between whoever's in that commitment together, whether it's you and a mate or you and your partner at home or whatever, can be a good thing for some people, but we just want to put a word of caution out there and bring the awareness around how risky it can be. Any last comments on that, Trent?
Yeah, just to reiterate the time, the cost and the funding mechanism for a developer. I always feel that the people that time in the market's always the winner.
Yeah.
So the big boys that are the really wealthy in Australia and around the world, they hold land for 10, 20 years before they even think about getting a site shovel ready. And some of the bigger apartment developers in the Trigger Boss and the likes, they build them and don't sell them. There's whole different scales of that, but just be very cautious because little development sites, and I've seen them, can look pretty sexy. But again, if there's 100 sites that I look at, I would only shortlist 20 and then bring them down to 10, and then they quickly, out of 100 things I look at, there might be only, you count on one hand that you start to get serious about. And then from that, then you've got to start negotiating contracts that work in your favour. You've got to spend some money to make sure that the numbers do stack, and then you still may walk away from that site. So, it's a lot of it's a full-time job.
And you mentioned the big players, and of course there are the big players. And then as it chunks down, we know each of the different layers that there are. Sort of as you work all the way down to whatever land is left over for the first-time developer. And of course, as we have those conversations and so forth, we get really aware of how risky it gets when you get down to those sites that are still available that haven't been taken up and are now on the retail market. We really do have an awareness, because we see it every day. We see people that we know, we've helped out over the years, that'll just turn up and say, hey, I've just bought this, and they're so excited about the money they're going to make, and we just feel so terrible.
We do feel terrible. I pick it apart in minutes.
I know. Yeah. I've given you a range of different examples of those, and I've seen within 3 minutes you've kind of gone, well, this is this and this, and I've gone, oh my gosh. You can see tens of thousands, and pretty quickly it's hundreds of thousands that they're already, way off track, and it can be a very scary one. And of course for you, Gordy, I know you've helped people build wealth over the years. You've been working with some of your clients so long. It must be heartbreaking when you see them build themselves up to a point where, I don't know whether it's through boredom or whether they just get overly confident or something.
I think that's what it
sabotage
is. It is. You do get overconfident, I think, and then you see something and you go, I've been doing this for so long, I'll try that. I'll just extend myself a little bit, and and when it turns quickly. And it's not something that you can ride out either, because once you're into it and you've spent money and you've borrowed money, and there's no income coming, it's a very slippery slope.
Mate, I just think about, for me personally, like I started investing very, very young, and I'm happy to share my mistakes. I'm always happy to learn from mistakes and try and help others from having to learn from their own mistakes. But I know that I had a lot of success in my early 30s particularly, and I think there's a bit of a feeling of, you might start believing you've got the Midas touch. You start thinking, I'm
Lucky Phil.
I'm really good at this, right? I've got a bit of lucky Phil over the years. But, I quickly learnt when I delved into, buying a building and trying to do little developments and, trying to, do other models that were way outside of my skill set. I sabotaged a bit of wealth there over a few years, and then some of those...
And time. You spend a lot of time on that stuff.
The opportunity cost is so big, Now, when you're in your 30s, you've got, decades to turn that thing back into the right direction. And I learnt my lessons enough to be able to go, luckily I didn't hurt too much of the, what I'd achieved. But I see people, like I said, doing this so late in their investing stage, and I just worry about people sabotaging how good a position they're in when they just don't need to.
And there's one or two things that's going to happen to them is they're going to greatly diminish their retirement experience, or they're just going to have to work longer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be longer in the workforce, and both of those are no good.
And the other thing, the other thing, and this is a good one for you, Trent, just as we wind up. I know that even when someone enters a building contract, when they enter a building contract, and we've heard stories of, the back of house of some of the building firms, and, these aren't the sort of guys we'd want to deal with, but, we've heard about signs that are up in the back of house in the staff room, variations equals profits. That was one of the ones that's always stuck in my head. Variations equals profits, because, they enter a contract where there's some money in it, not big, but it's not a bad little project for that building company, but they know that over the course of the time, if the investor has to make some variations, or is going
based on the development approval they finally get, which is 12 months down the track. There's always changes, and you can't get a fixed price contract on that commercial scale when you're doing a mini development.
That's another point. So you don't get to control it that well anyway, right? And then if you're a bit emotionally attached to it, and you decide, I'd like this, or I like that, or I want to add this, all those variations very quickly can just spiral into more profits for the builder, whoever you've contracted, but less profits for the developer. And we've just seen so many things, and I guess they're the experience that these new investors are yet to learn, and it's just it's a tough thing to watch them entering those things, and with the rose-coloured glasses on.
Yeah, that's right. And we're just having a chat, really, just to make sure. If there is listeners out there who are considering that, just go in eyes wide open, and if you want to reach out and have a chat, and we're here as well.
Yeah, take your time, do your due diligence, make sure you know what you're signing up for, but be very careful. Try to get a mentor around you. If you're going to definitely go down that path, I would say you need to know someone who does that consistently, that you've got access to be able to mentor you through the process, because it can be ugly.
That's a really good point. I can just, from me personally, had some very experienced people around me that have delivered thousands of, I call them things, whether they be units or raw blocks of land.
Yep.
And experience, those guys, you need to have some good people around you.
And mate, that's one thing, talking the land development side, we know who I'm thinking of. Yep. Some of the most experienced, highly successful people in those pockets that you've had access to, to mentor you along. And I think it's just vital. I just think if you're going in, you think it's going to be something you can work through and figure out yourself, that's where the danger is. You need somebody who's doing that particular strategy, consistently, that can help you through it. Well, thanks for joining me, gentlemen. As always,
Pleasure.
it's been great having you here. We'll talk about another great topic next week. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, and also feel free to leave me a question. I look forward to helping as many property investors as possible. Take care, and we'll talk soon.